Wake up, Chief. I need you.
Chief! Easy. You've been out for a while.
Where are we?
We're still adrift on the Dawn.
Why did you wake me?
She woke both of us.
Chief looks over to Noble 6 as he's holstering his assault rifle.
And the others?
Still in critical condition.
Chief looks over to the pod with George in it.
Some more than others. I'll wake them if we need them, but I'd only be comfortable with waking Noble 1, and 2 at best.
We can handle it.
Noble 6 starts clenching his fists, then stretching, filling out his new upgraded armor. Chief looks down at his own armor.
I rewrote your suit firmware while you were out.
You've been busy.
Chief looks over at Noble 6 again as he's picking up a service tag from one of the dead Marines' bodies floating about that Chief had missed. This makes Chief reflexively check a compartment on the side of his leg, where he had stowed away the rest of the tags. He can feel they're still in there.
Ready to get back to work?
I thought you'd never ask.
We've got intrusion alerts lighting up on multiple decks. Our best bet to figure out who's boarding us is the observation deck, 4 floors up.
Could it be a rescue team?
I wouldn't bet on it.
Noble 6 finishes loading ammo into his sidearm. The first change to the timeline here is so nitpicky you might laugh, but with the added mass of all the Spartans on board, the Dawn has drifted slightly closer to Requiem due to gravity. So when Chief asks,
How long was I out?
Cortana, instead of saying 4 years, 7 months, 10 days, she says,
4 years, 7 months, 9 days.
Again, I want to emphasize gravity pull is stronger, but if you know physics, you know it's not that big of a difference if you do the math. But for the purpose of this timeline, it is 1 day earlier.
Somebody should have found us by now.
The mission proceeds as regular, except when Chief and 6 climb up the elevator shaft, an elite and a brute attack them. This elite is wearing red armor instead of blue, and the brute is also sporting an energy sword, something very peculiar to both of them. Chief contends with the elite, and Noble 6 dodges the incoming brute, making him run right into the elite. Chief Spartan kicks them both down the shaft by kicking the brute on the side of his ribs.
I thought we defeated the Covenant.
A lot can happen in 4 years.
And that didn't look like Covenant.
Chief thinks about it for a minute, and he did notice how the elite and the brute had different markings on their armor, not strictly Covenant. The rest of this section plays the same, except instead of an elite up here, it's a brute.
The good news is these Covenant aren't outfitted like standard military. It's possible we just came across a rogue salvage ship. Or we might have stumbled into an entire Covenant fleet.
Red Covenant, that's new.
The rest of the section on the Hall of the Dawn plays out just the same. Chief says,
These Covenants seem more fanatical than the ones we fought before.
More dangerous, too.
after launching the missile and Requiem begins to open up, Chief and Noble 6 start running inside. Chief tells Cortana to prep the cryopods. They'll need the rest of the Spartans with this armada surrounding them. Cortana tries to do it, but can't. Here's where we see Virgil take over for Cortana. He was giving her a chance, mostly as a courtesy, but partly to test her and see just how bad her rampancy had gotten. Unfortunately, he waited too long. Because of the delay, they couldn't wake up the other Spartans. Instead, Virgil tells them he had to set the pods to launch out, since the ship will break apart in re-entry to the atmosphere. The pods can survive it, but if the ship breaks apart, that might damage them. As the ship breaks, the two Spartans fall through the ceiling to Requiem, and from Master Chief's point of view, we see the cryopods launch out from the forward onto Dawn, so they can be reclaimed later. But two pods are struck by debris. Then from Noble 6's point of view, we see how these two pods get launched into a very different direction. 6 reaches his hand out, but can't do anything as Gravity and Requiem are taking him in. Virgil automatically tracks which pods those two were on his heads-up display. It was Carter and Katz. We switch over to Master Chief's point of view, and it's the same intro as to Halo 4. The beginning of Mission 2 plays out just the same as Chief wakes up and asks Cortana what's wrong. She tells him she's okay, but Chief knows something's wrong since before, and that's when Noble 6 comes around from over a small hill and Virgil says,
Cortana, Tell him.
Cortana explains the situation about her rampancy. The conversation stays the same as Chief wants to get Cortana back to Earth and to Halsey. The mission plays out generally the same, except they don't get transmissions from the Infinity, as the Infinity is not close enough to Requiem yet. Remember, this is happening about 24 hours earlier than originally. The biggest change in the campaign begins to be noticeable here though, as they aren't fighting Covenant, they are fighting Banished. Cortana and Virgil are intercepting transmissions from the Banished, since unbeknownst to them, the Spartans have AIs. They have been communicating on an open network. With the Banished here, that just means there's a lot more brutes, as opposed to Halo 4's no brutes. As far as this being a game, we would get to experience fighting the Banished vehicles and units. If there is something lacking from Halo Infinite to me, it's not playable elites, but Banished vehicles. Where are the blister bags, the red missile scarabs, the shrouds, the reavers? It's an absolute shame for these vehicles to be absent of Halo Infinite. The Banished just feel like Halo 3 brutes, which is not bad, cause granted those were the best versions of those enemies, but it means Infinite lacks its own identity in a lot of areas. Anyway, let's get back to the story. Master Chief and Noble 6 take the same path that Master Chief takes during the Halo 4 campaign, essentially getting to this section, where they fight several ghosts, but this time around, instead of these being sniper gravity towers, we get 2 blister bags on top of the 2 rock formations. The challenge for the Master Chief and Noble 6 is to avoid getting outranged and barraged by blister bags. Chief may be more enhanced than Noble 6, but he is a physically bigger target, therefore the ground troops focus on him, while Noble 6 has also seemingly grown slightly from the armor upgrades Cortana and Virgil had set up for them in the 4+ years of sleeping in cryo. Chief is skilled enough to avoid direct fire, but with all the focus on him, it does not leave much room for quick progress, which is where Noble 6 comes in. By sheer precision and skill, he takes care of the group of jackals and grunts defending the closest blister bag to them, and quickly moves on to assault the driver by hijacking the vehicle and stomping out the pilot brute with his armor's weight alone. This buys the Master Chief enough breathing room to begin assaulting back the elites, attempting to gain glory at his expense. His speed alone causes the Banished to commit friendly fire, as the second blister bag in the further back launches a barrage of missiles, and Chief simply sprints his way out of the blast zone, leaving the pursuing elites behind to suffer from a friendly fire death from above. After capturing the first blister bag, Noble 6 uses its missiles to quickly dispense righteous justice upon the brutes protecting the blister bag in the back line, in this process taking care of Master Chief's attackers. The both of them regroup as they make their way through this rock formation, both wary of an ambush, which they are right to fear as a pack of dozen skirmishers holding plasma repeaters and needlers surround them from above. This is not a painful ambush though, as the Banished tend to attack in smarter ways than the regular Covenant, but the Master Chief and Noble 6 both are the 1-2 punch of the UNSC and take care of them before the skirmishers could empty out a single magazine. They proceed into the facility with the localized cartographer after finding a few more Banished forces. Once they get to the cartographer though, Cortana isn't the one to get plugged in, it's Virgil, as they think it's the best if he does the heavy lifting tech-wise from now on until Cortana can get back to Halsey. After finding out they are on Requiem, their priority becomes finding a way to communicate with the UNSC or finding a way off-world. The same thing happens with them being prematurely kicked out of the system and having to reset the data fields, and once they come back to the cartographer, they find the transportation terminals. Since they have no reason to be looking for the Infinity this time around, instead they're just looking through the terminal to see what their options are. After finding out there's a priority 1 asset in the center of the planet, Virgil tells 6 he can activate the portal network and try to get them close. Master Chief and Noble 6 question how they could get to the center of the planet, but both Cortana and Virgil point out that it's probably hollow considering they already went through one layer of the planet. Noble 6 and Chief want to use the cartographer and the transit system to locate the cryopods off the rest of Noble team and secure them before the Banished can. Virgil and Cortana both believe their best chance is to get to the center of the planet and take control of this mysterious asset, as surely it would lead them to a cartographer that will map out the entirety of Requiem, or at least give them the firepower needed to stop the Banished from getting those cryopods. From here on, their plan is just the same, to get to the core of the planet. So they head through the murder bridge, where they are ambushed once again by Banished forces, which stays relatively the same until they reach the next section, where the Phantom is dropping off a Banished Wraith, similar to an anti-air Wraith, but it shoots fuel rods directly at the ground instead of up. While there is no grunts and small arms enemies here, Chief and Noble 6 have to contend with a dual pair of banished marauders and the brutes piloting them. The pair makes quick work of the marauders. Master Chief runs directly at one coming after him, hops over the front as the brute steps on the pedal trying to run him over, and Chief does a flip over the vehicle, shooting the driver through the head in midair. Noble 6 opts to instead throw a frag grenade as his opponent also attempts to run him over, perfectly timing the grenade to have the explosion flip the marauder over and launching the brute off his seat directly at Noble 6, landing right at the Spartan's boots, only to receive a pistol shot through the forehead as the brute starts to look up. The pair then coordinates attacks to destroy the anti-ground wraith standing in their way, by 6 being a distraction and Master Chief running up behind it, ripping apart one of the wraith's panels and placing a plasma grenade inside the open hatch, forcing the piloting combination of brute and elite to hop out, only to be met by Noble 6 on the other side, ready to break them as they exit the vehicle. They make their way up the structure, each taking one side, clearing it with ease, until they reach the upstairs section where the sentinels have engaged the hunters above. These banished hunters, however, are equipped with needler turrets instead of cannons and plasma-based weapons. Though it is an extremely difficult battle as the threat of the needles keeps them both pinned down, Master Chief's luck is just so that the sentinel is destroyed, leaving its carcass in front of him with the sentinel beam intact. Master Chief picks up the beam and heads back. Virgil is confused, thinking the Master Chief ran away, but he doesn't understand combat on the level that Chief and Noble 6 do. Instead, Noble 6 prepares for the Chief to go through with his plan. The Master Chief runs back to the lower level and blasts the Sentinel beam at full power directly beneath the hunters. The extreme heat begins to melt through and give way as the hunters unexpectedly find themselves falling through the floor. Noble 6 wastes no time and books it to them as they're falling in order to catch them off guard. Once on the lower floor, they become enraged and start trying to shoot at Chief, but leave themselves wide open for an attack from above from Noble 6, effectively rendering them a pile of dead worms. They finally get to the console, where this time Virgil tells them it's only one point of the terminal system on Requiem, and night starts to spawn in all around them, just like in the original. A portal opens up and they go through, but instead of Cortana not understanding where the portal came from and Chief chalking it up to being the madness of Cortana's rampancy, Noble 6 questions the validity of this portal. They're both wary as they believe someone or something is watching them to know when to open this portal up. The next section becomes very similar, but first they encounter this knight that originally lands on Master Chief, except this time it lands on Noble 6, but the poor knight does not know who he's messing with, as almost immediately Chief tackles the creature and pushes it onto the ground. 6 quickly gets up to help the Chief keep the knight pinned down while Cortana and Virgil scan it, as it begins to attempt to get free though. Noble 6 kills the knight, emptying an entire clip into its exposed parts. Both Virgil and Cortana explain the weak points on the Spartan heads-up display after thoroughly analyzing the knights. They had also managed to intercept transfer data from the knight. It seems they are receiving orders from a few locations. The pylons which Master Chief shuts down originally are where the knights were getting their orders from, so the two of them split up to hit these pylons quicker, each cutting a swath through the Prometheans and beginning to use Promethean weapons and becoming experts with them, after which they both make their way through the teleportation terminals and end up at the center of Requiem, where they encounter the war cryptum of the Didact. They find Banished there as they are trying to activate and or steal the cryptum in Atriox's name. Leading the Banished forces here is Decimus, one of the founders of the Banished. For those of you who recognize this name, this is the Banished leader the Spirit of Fire kills during the Halo Wars 2 campaign. Noble 6 and Master Chief have a heavy battle against the Brute and his forces, one which ends with the Spartans fighting Decimus in hand-to-hand combat, as this is the Brute's preferred method of fighting. Armed with his exoskeleton, similar to as if a human was wearing Mjolnir, the Brute gives the duo a run for their money, as he also possesses a gravity hammer capable of forcibly pulling the Spartans off the ground and tossing them around. The two Spartans, however, work together to kill the Brute. Noble 6 by picking up a nearby energy shield from a dead skirmisher, and Master Chief using his superior reaction time to keep up with the Brute's attacks in a fistfight. Though the exoskeleton the Brute is wearing can outmatch the Spartan armor Chief wields, Chief demonstrates it's the man inside the machine that counts. Chief is having to exert all his strength to take the brute head on, while the brute's suit's weapons focus on Noble 6, to this extent slowing him down. But now armed with a shield, Noble 6 finally manages to get in close, leap onto the brute and stab his knife into the brute's neck, only slightly missing a vital artery, thus bringing the brute down on top of Noble 6. The Spartan-III quickly grabs his sidearm as he is coming down with the weight of an armor-clad brute on top of him. Now pinned to the ground, the brute uses his left arm to grab onto the Spartan's helmet, as his right arm was rendered immobile from the large knife cutting into his neck and onto the muscles connecting to his arm. Decimus uses his added strength from his armor to begin crushing it with Noble 6 along. But just as the glass on the helmet begins to crack, Noble 6 places his sidearm between the brute's teeth, and with a bang, monkey brains spill all over both Spartans. Chief lifts up the brute and his armor off Noble 6 and gives him a nod.
Cutting it close there.
No thanks to your help.
The two approach the console which Chief uses to activate and open the didact scriptum. The rest of this plays out the same though. The didact awakens, gives his speech, turns the Prometheans on his favor, and psychically pulls the Spartan's armors. He tosses them aside and activates his scriptum to a slip space jump. This time though, the Infinity isn't here yet, and instead, he jumps to the banished fleet. Chief and Noble 6 are forced to go through the ghost run to get out of the collapsing area of Requiem, but instead of the librarian teleporting them to the jungle area, they end up at the desert area, near the citadel in which the librarian AI meets Master Chief. The second act begins as the Spartans make their way through the desert, facing off against the Promethean knights now serving the didact. The enemies they encounter throughout are more Prometheans and less banished. But the banished are still lurking about, except with the death of one of their leaders, Decimus, and with the didact attacking the banished fleet that has landed on Requiem. They are more focused on fighting the didact instead of the Spartans. This allows the Spartans a relatively ease in their effort to push to the citadel where they will meet the librarian's imprint. It is only at this point where they begin to get signals from the Infinity, as it's the next day already. While Virgil and Cortana work on decoding transmissions from the Infinity, the Spartans make it inside the citadel, in which they are ambushed by Prometheans. This is almost inconsequential, but here we discover something that many of us have speculated on for years. The librarian reveals herself to both Spartans, advancing Master Chief's genetic evolution, but once she comes up to Noble 6, she halts for a moment and declares this reclaimer is raw, but filled with much potential, yet untapped. She is referring to the augmentations. The Spartan-IIIs received a lot less augmentations than Spartan-IIs. While headhunters such as Noble 6 received a few more than the normal Spartan-IIIs, they still were not considered to be able to survive what the 2s did. However, as we know, Halsey planned on starting yet another class of Spartans, but she didn't because A, she didn't have enough funding, and B, she didn't have enough suitable candidates. We can realize that her not having enough suitable candidates means there were still several out there who could become greater with the given opportunities. The librarian sees this within Noble 6. She also awakens his gene song, though this will take a longer time than what it did with Master Chief, which serves as a mission on its own. Master Chief has to protect Noble 6 and the librarian's AI while the Prometheans assault their location, all culminating in a battle much like Halo 5's fight against the Warden Eternal. Surrounded by Forerunner constructs, Master Chief is running out of ammo and room to fight, when Noble 6 comes out from the trance held by the librarian. Now with this awakening, Noble 6 aids the Master Chief in repelling back all Forerunner opposition. The Spartan-III is still not quite on Master Chief's level, unfortunately, as he never received the physical augmentations Chief did. But these two stand atop the genetic pool of all humanity, now with enhancements to their armor from the 4 years in cryo, and enhancements to their meat suits. There's very little that could stand in their way. They're also both now immune to being composed. Immune is a strong word, as we know what happened to the Chief when he was hit by the composer, but they both should be able to survive it. After exiting the facility, they have now begun to receive clear signals from the Infinity, except the vessel doesn't identify as UNSC Infinity. It identifies as the Fleet of Infinite Justice. From a gameplay point of view, Master Chief and Noble 6 finish fighting a squad of 4 Promethean knights equipped with incinerator cannons, and immediately as the cutscene begins, Chief and Noble 6 look up as 40 ships exit slipspace above in the far distance. Amongst them, the first is the Infinity, followed by 28 Covenant vessels of all sizes. 3 of them are peculiar, as 2 are almost the same size as the Infinity, but 1 is even larger than the Infinity itself, and 11 more human. most being smaller frigates. Master Chief begins to get signals from all these ships as friendly, and the direct communications link to attack designated Captain Keyes. Master Chief expects to talk with Jacob Keyes when the voice he hears on his radio turns out to be Miranda. Her transmission is coming from the Covenant vessel second in command of the fleet. Miranda says she can't believe the Spartans are alive and made it here to Requiem of all places. She sends down several Phantoms to oversee the return of the Master Chief and Noble Six to safety. The Phantoms are then given orders by Captain Del Rio to take them on board the Infinity instead. Del Rio is very mad that Keyes went over his head, but brings Noble Six and Chief on board his ship instead. Yes, he is still captain of the Infinity in this timeline. As Chief and Noble Six board, they get word that the fleet of Infinite Justice has already found and recovered one of the cryopods. They found June's cryopod, and they have dispatched several vessels to another one, that one belonging to Emil. They also detect that the 2 cryopods that were left in space had been captured by the Banished. Here is where Chief and Six get an explanation to what has been happening since their absence in the galaxy. After the firing of the Halo at the Ark, humanity had basically won the war. The Covenant got erased from existence, and thus leaving behind thousands of Covenant ships. Once Captain Keyes and his daughter arrived back at the solar system and Earth, the UNSC began to dispatch as many AI and humans as possible back through the portal to the Ark, in order to retake all those vessels and claim them for themselves. But they had such limited personnel, they couldn't get all the ships. Information had been leaked from the UNSC to insurgents about all these free ships, and the Banished had learned this from the insurgents and pirates in their ranks. Atriox and his fleet made a jump to the Ark to try and commandeer as many ships as possible as well, which is why the Banished have a lot more ships than the main timeline. The final caveat of this came in Saitan Watinri. As a big chunk of his fleet was decimated by the Sentinels on Onyx, he still had about 200 ships left after gathering the rest of what remained of the Covenant. After months, they found out the Covenant had succeeded in activating the ring at the Ark, but had all perished. This did not destroy their faith, however. Instead, they became more devout, believing the Covenant had perished because the prophets had led them, and the prophets were unworthy of the ring's holy salvation. But after the news that the Covenant was mostly gone, they had to pull back to San Helios, where Zaitan became the new arbiter and restored glory to that title. He then dispatched a part of his fleet to go back to investigate what remained of the Covenant fleet, giving his right hand command of the Sublime Transcendence. Avu Med Telkam took the supercarrier and headed to the Ark, where his fleet encountered the Banished and the humans having an all-out war for control of the ships left behind. However, at this point, they were outpositioned and outnumbered. They did not last very long in that fight, but anyone who read Ghost of Onyx knows what was on board the Sublime Transcendence, the Nova Bomb. When the Sublime Transcendence was destroyed, it activated the Nova Bomb on board, wiping out a lot of the ships around the Ark and Installation 04. This culminated in humanity regaining control of the Ark. Well, the remains of the Ark, but the Banished made out with a few hundred ships. The remains of the Covenant renaming themselves the Swords of St. Helios, just like the Arbiters of Legend. And similar to the main timeline, but they are by far the weakest faction, as it's mainly a union of elites, hunters, a few grunts, and most of the drones. Basically, the races that most believe the Forerunners are gods still. Humanity is technically the strongest force in the galaxy, but only technically, as they had a few months to begin taking Covenant ships back to the solar system to fortify Earth. Noble Six and Master Chief then found out why Captain Keyes was not given command of humanity's greatest self-built ship, the Infinity. Humanity recovered over 2,000 Covenant ships, some which could stand toe-to-toe with the Infinity, but none of that meant anything for Jacob Keyes. Having proved himself time and time again throughout the Human Covenant War, he was promoted to Fleet Admiral. As Lordhood is beginning to get old and preparing to pass on the baton to Keyes, especially now that the Human Covenant War was over, but Keyes was given the command of what was now humanity's most powerful asset. The floating city of High Charity, now essentially a second moon to Earth, has been almost fully retrofitted for human use. Humanity spent the last few years refortifying Earth and retrofitting all the Covenant ships to be human compatible, as well as trying to do a massive production of AIs in order to claim the Covenant ships without their own onboard AI going rogue. The Spartan-IV program took a back seat, as well as reclamation of old colonies, meaning the UNSC has less planets and the insurgents and outlaws control a lot more planets humanity used to inhabit. But their forces are weak, so that's not a huge deal. Among the few Spartan force that do exist is Alpha 9. Buck's squad all were first in line to become Spartans in order to honor the memory of Master Chief and Noble Team. This means no Fire Team Majestic still, and Osiris will be a little bit different. Alright, so let's get back to the Master Chief and Noble 6. Now that you're caught up, after their debrief, Miranda arrives on board the Infinity with Alpha 9 as her personal bodyguards and subordinates, not as a show of power to Del Rio, but as a welcome to the Spartans believed to be lost forever. Miranda expresses how she is happy to see the chief and says they renamed an entire fleet in Johnson's memory, and the restoration of his hometown was swiftly overseen by her father. The new Spartan force get a chance to talk to Noble 6 and get to tell him how they were in charge of recovering the cryopods of the rest of Noble Team, and they will not fail no matter the cost. Noble 6 believes them when they say they are willing to lay down their lives in order to save the rest of Noble, and leaves them to it. Del Rio wants to make contact with the Didact and offer a truce, but Master Chief interrupts him and tells him the Didact is not a reasonable and sensible being. The Didact clearly plans to try to retake the Forerunner's old glory, and he has a vendetta against humanity. Del Rio does not listen, however, as he believes the Didact will side with humanity in fighting the Banished. Once the fleet of Infinite Justice arrives on Requiem, the Didact retracted from fighting the Banished and instead headed to his ship, the Mantle's Approach. This is where the rest of the conflict begins to come to a head, as Del Rio had moved in with his fleet to combat the Banished here, weakened by the Didact, but immediately is proven wrong on the Didact's intentions. As all ships were focused on the Banished, the Mantle's Approach and the planetary defenses begin to fire on the fleet of Infinite Justice. In the ensuing chaos, Del Rio refuses to send out the Spartans, calling them useless in a naval battle, but Miranda, being second in command, has better plans for them. While Alpha 9 works on recovering the rest of Noble Team around the planet, 6 and Chief can board Mantle's Approach and kill the Didact. Noble 6 boards an experimental hybrid vehicle with human and Covenant technology, and Master Chief a fully outfitted combat Pelican. They each set out to board the Mantle's Approach, while Miranda's supercarrier provides them with support. Del Rio really doesn't care for Miranda. He feels it is an insult for her and himself to be of the same rank, and is actively trying to keep the Infinity safe while putting all other ex-Covenant vessels and ships at risk for his own safety. Both the Master Chief and 6's piloting abilities are superb, but Noble 6 has the edge over him, as he has trained far more time with flying vehicles, as well as having a more advanced fighter. They make an entrance into the Mantle's Approach and fight their way throughout the ship. But this is not fast enough, as the Didact has been using his ship's superior systems to steal data from the UNSC ships. He has now located the Composer, and knowing he can't best all of humanity's ships here, he opens the slip space portal to Installation 03 to try to get to the Composer. Del Rio, being an idiot, refuses to let his fleet follow the Didact, saying the Infinity needs repairs, and to explore the rest of Requiem. Just like how Keyes was catapulted to the top of the UNSC with obtaining a huge victory and getting a lot of the Covenant's old ships, Del Rio wants to get Forerunner technology, as he knows that would surpass the Covenant's old toys. The Vanished, though, almost completely decimated after the battle against Requiem and the Didact, as well as the three-way fight between the UNSC, the Didact, and themselves, decide to follow the Didact. They see this as their best chance to finish him off and take their super advanced Forerunner ship for themselves. Though Aatrox is not here, they believe that is what he would do, and follow the Forerunner vessel. But they are smart enough to leave the Spartans behind. The captured ones in cryopods were one of the UNSC's top priorities, and leaving them behind saves the Banished from being followed. They get lucky in this regard, as Del Rio is brain dead. Noble 6 and Master Chief force their way through the Mantle's Approach, but meet challenge after challenge. Hordes of Promethean knights assaulting them from every which way. Luckily, both vehicles they brought had a wide array of armaments. As far as this being a game, it would allow the player to carry 3 weapons, and 4 of each grenade type. Master Chief, having a preference for human weapons, is rewarded with a saw, a rocket launcher, and a railgun, while Noble 6's vehicle contains more Covenant weapons. Noble 6 decides to go for mobility over power. Seeing as Master Chief is a walking tank in every sense of the word, he dual carries plasma pistols that have been tweaked to create vortexes that use gravity technology to pull in enemies, as well as a needler-based carbine rifle, which excels at super combined explosions, and a variation of the Elite's swords. After having found hundreds of thousands of swords on board the Covenant ships, the UNSC had tinkered with the weapons a lot to make them into something they saw more fit for their warriors. The sword had become a favorite amongst the new Spartan-IV candidates, and a Spartan-IV named Sarah Palmer had borrowed an AI to help her with modifications, thus creating the Claw, an energy sword with a handle double the weight and size, but much longer reach. The sword was twice as long and could cut through Mjolnir like a hot knife through ice. Noble 6 carries this sword on his back in the meantime. If you're wondering how I would implement this weapon into the games, simple. It's just like the energy sword, except you wield it with two hands. It can block some of the incoming damage, but only if the person shooting at you has bad aim and hits the sword instead of the player. It is a one-hit kill like the regular sword, except its main form of damage is by lunging at the opponent from afar, and I do mean really far, like 2.5 times the distance of a normal sword rush. Now you might be thinking that sounds OP as hell, but the caveat is you have to lock onto the target, as in you have to hold your aim over the enemy long enough to charge the lunge. Let me know what you guys think of this possible weapon in the comments. The Spartans finish fighting several waves of knights when the Mantle's approach suddenly breaks out of slip space and arrives at Installation 03, Ivanov Station. Though still busy recuperating from all the events of the last 4 years, humanity had found the composer just like in the main timeline and moved it to Ivanov Station. However, this time around there is a lot less scientists, as most of the important scientists and researchers are back on high charity studying the Forerunner Dreadnought that powers the city. When they arrive at Ivanov Station, the Didact moves in to look for the composer, while the Banished also revealed they tagged along. Noble 6 and Chief have to defend Ivanov Station from both the attacks of the Banished and the threat of the Didact finding this super weapon. Once Master Chief and Noble 6 get to this large open area, they are nervous. Yes, Spartans nervous, as all their instincts are telling them something is wrong, but they don't see anything. That's when they begin to focus more. The shadows on the floor don't look right. Chief starts spraying his saw on the direction of this misshapen shadow, only to discover there's dozens of banished brutes, elites and grunts cloaked and hiding. The banished had deployed several shrouds. These are vehicles that have a cloaking unit built in order to hide themselves and troops. This allowed them to land dozens of troops on Ivanov Station, while the Spartans are busy taking care of the Banished. The Banished are setting up Reavers, and lots of them. In order to try to stop the Cryptum, the plan is to destroy the Didact's Cryptum and take his ship, since they didn't know about the composer. But the Didact coming here and scanning the station from top to bottom has made the Banished realize the composer must be extremely valuable. Master Chief and Noble 6 use a combination of their weapons to run the gauntlet on the Banished, while Noble 6 creates vortex pockets of gravity to draw in the enemies. Chief uses the rocket to blow them to bits. They successfully repel the Banished forces, but the Banished Reavers are now unmanned. This would be followed by the second to last part of the mission, being Master Chief and Noble 6 getting into Reavers and having to do a certain amount of damage to the Cryptum before the Cryptum counterattacks and destroys each Reaver. You have to switch Reavers a few times just to be able to do enough damage to bring the Cryptum down. After taking so much damage, the Cryptum has found the composer and begun lifting it up into the Mantle's approach. By the time 6 and Chief have brought the Didact's Cryptum down, the composer is on board the Mantle's approach. The Spartans hop off the Reavers and head back to the Mantle's approach. Cortana suggests going back to where they left the Pelican and the Covenant human hybrid, now officially named the Chimera, and grab a tactical Havoc nuke from the Pelican. Since the Shrouds are flying vehicles, they take these up to the Mantle's approach. Once they get back to the Pelican, the Chief discovers Cortana is wrong. Her rampancy made her make a mistake, and they are running out of time, as the Didact was hunting them down to avoid any more damage to his ship and continue on his conquest. Cortana wants to redeem herself and says she can improvise a bomb from the Chimera's power supply. She sets up a progress bar on the top of their HUDs to show how close she is to overriding the safety protocols of the experimental vehicle, so they can know when they need to leave the ship to avoid dying. Virgil and 6 aren't too happy. They don't get a say in this. But the moment Cortana gets plugged into the Chimera systems, Chief and 6 get launched back by the Didact.
Cortana!
With their shields down, the pair has no choice but to try and hide or die. But the Didact gets too close to the Chimera, which gives Cortana the opportunity to use its guns on the Didact. This buys the Spartans just enough time for their shields to recover and begin firing at the Didact. Seeing as their weapons are inefficient, Cortana notices the Didact's shields are adapting to the damage and making it ineffective. She cycles through and pulses the Chimera's shields, sending out a short-wave EMP in the same way the Chief does to disrupt the data fields in Halo Combat Evolved and in Mission 2 of Halo 4. Basically what him and 6 did at the beginning when they found the localized cartographer. This renders the Didact's shields useless, forcing him to use the Mantle's approach's teleportation system and teleporting him in front of the Spartans in order to avoid their guns. This is his best chance to beat them, as his sheer size and strength begins to overpower the Spartans. The Didact takes a few hits from the Spartans, but backhands Noble 6 with his left hand and immediately follows up with a punch to the Spartan's helmet. After the damage Decimus put into the helmet, it cracks and the visor breaks. 6's vitals flash critically red for a moment. The Didact takes a combo punch from the Master Chief, pushing him back a meter, but this distance gives the Didact the opportunity to kick Master Chief in the chest, knocking him down onto the floor. The Didact lunges at Noble 6 in a Superman position as he strikes the Spartan-III with both his fists, launching him back several meters. The Didact quickly looks to his side as Master Chief is about to get up. He pounces on him and starts hitting him in the face over and over. The Master Chief's helmet starts to break, all while Chief is trying to push the Didact off of him with a final punch that breaks the Didact's jaw, forcing him to turn away. He wraps his hand around the Master Chief's throat as he prepares to choke the life out of him. This moment of looking away is used by Noble 6 as he lunges towards the Promethean warrior with the claw. The Didact manages to move out of the way, but only slightly. He activates a Promethean light blade on his right arm and goes in for a fight with Noble 6. The strikes of the clashing swords are pushing Noble 6 back. As the swords collide, Master Chief slowly gets up and runs as fast as he can to the Didact, tackling him but not quite knocking him off balance and onto the ground. The Didact lifts both of his arms up, puts his fists together to bring them down on top of Master Chief. He hits him on top of the head, breaking his helmet in half and bringing the Master Chief down onto his knees. The chunk of his armored helmet that broke off lies next to his foot. The Master Chief reaches it and stabs the Didact on the right knee before the Didact can bring his sword down on the Chief. The Didact's body jerks with pain, but this was just the opening Noble 6 needed. He forgoes the long-range lunge and just rams the sword straight through the Didact's stomach. Just like Emil got impaled, Chief thinks. But just like Emil, they know this will not kill him instantly. The Master Chief jumps off the ground using all his momentum to punch the Didact on his already broken jaw, sending the Didact reeling backwards several feet. He collapses into a kneeling position. The blood dripping from his knee begins to pool around him, and all three of them are breathing heavily. The progress bar at the top of Noble 6's helmet shows full, just before he can tell the Chief, since Chief's helmet is lying on the floor broken in two pieces. The Didact begins to laugh while coughing up blood. His shields flash on and start to regenerate. He says,
"And yet, still you fail."
After his shields finish regenerating, he begins to get up and floats a few feet off the ground. Cortana yells out,
Chief!
Right as the Didact flies towards the Spartans at an alarming speed, Virgil teleports the two Spartans off the Mantle's approach, on to the closest thing he can think of, back to Ivanov Station. The instant they're gone, Cortana blows up the Chimera's engine, taking out the Composer and the Mantle's approach. Chief once again yells out,
Cortana!
In the middle of the desolation they can see above Ivanov Station is the Banished, as they move in to recover pieces from the broken ship just before the ship jumps into slipspace and disappears. We get to see the rest of this from the Banished's point of view, as a Zanghili on the bridge of the ship says,
Multiple human slipspace signatures.
The commanding brute roars. He says they can't leave empty-handed, not after this much lost. Atriox would crush him with his bare hands. The Banished move in to the remains and collect something from the debris left behind from the Mantle's approach before jumping into slipspace. A few moments later, a much larger fleet arrives at Ivanov Station. Along with it is High Charity as well as 600 ships. On their comms, they hear a familiar voice say, We're here to take you home, Spartans. This takes place on board High Charity, orbiting Earth. Chief is looking out into the vastness of space, overlooking Earth, and Admiral Keyes walks up to him. He says, Good to see you again, son, and follows up with a speech almost the exact same as Lasky's at the end of Halo 4, just with the details about his own personal life instead, just with Keyes instead of Lasky.
At ease, Chief. Feels kinda odd for you to call me sir. Beautiful, isn't she? I don't get to see her often enough. I grew up in New Harmony, attended Corbulo Military Academy. Never saw Earth in person until I was an adult, but I still think of her as home. You don't talk much, do you? Chief, I won't pretend to know how you feel. I mean, I've lost people I care about, but never anything like you're going through.
Our duty as soldiers is to protect humanity, whatever the cost.
You say that like soldiers and humanity are two different things. I mean, soldiers aren't machines. We're just people. I'll let you have the deck to yourself.
She said that to me once. About being a machine.
Thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Have a great night, Reclaimers.